What if Beethoven's hearing loss didn't just limit him, but actually shaped some of his greatest masterpieces? Let's explore that musical mystery.
Hey, I'm Leah, feeling curious and so ready to get into this today.
And I'm Garrett, totally down to dive into Beethoven's world right now.
All right, here's where we begin. Ludwig van Beethoven, the German composer and pianist who basically helped bridge the classical style of Haydn and Mozart to the more emotionally charged Romantic era. Life, works, hearing loss, patronage, legacy, the full picture today. Picture this. I'm in a small practice room with a cello part arranged from Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, which he wrote for piano. Those rolling arpeggios feel like waves, and I'm like, okay, just play the notes. But it was the quiet that caught me, the way the harmonies lean forward, almost whispering. My teacher, a gentle stickler for phrasing, said, "Remember, Beethoven was already struggling with his hearing when he wrote around this era, and that he listened inward." That line stuck. I kept thinking about the pedaled haze on piano and how on cello I had to breathe the line in one long thought. Suddenly, the piece stopped feeling fragile and started feeling brave. It was like he teaches you patience, to trust one motif, one mood. Honestly, once I connected that to his hearing challenges, the piece opened up. The emotion wasn't decoration. It was architecture.
Let's set the scene. Beethoven's the bridge between classical clarity and romantic intensity. Think of him as installing bigger beams and deeper foundations under the old house so it could carry way more weight. He took forms like the symphony and the string quartet meaning two violins, a viola and a cello in conversation, and he enlarged them. The Eroica, that's Symphony No. 3, stretches time and drama, and the ninth adds a choir to the symphony's finale, which was a radical move. He obsessed over motivic unity, a tiny musical idea seeding the whole piece. It's like building a whole city around a single street corner, compact then cosmic.
Real talk. To track his growth, people often split his career into 3 periods. Early, where the classical influence is strong; middle, sometimes called heroic, when the scale and boldness jump; and late, where the inward experimental voice goes deep. If you hear us mention an opus number, that's just a publisher's catalog number, not always chronological. And the Heiligenstadt Testament, quick definition, that's a letter he wrote in 1802 to his brothers in despair over his hearing, resolving to live for art. For me, it explains why the Eroica and later the Fifth don't just sound big, they sound necessary, like a personal decision turned into musical architecture.
Beginning of the story. Beethoven grows up in Bonn. His father, Johann, is a court tenor, strict and often harsh. Practice could be late night and punishing. As a kid, he studies with local teachers, then Christian Gottlob Neefe, the Bonn court organist. Neefe is huge. He introduces him to Bach's well-tempered clavier, basically a masterclass in harmony and counterpoint. By 1784, Beethoven's a paid assistant organist. He's also playing viola in the court orchestra, soaking up opera. Then there's the von Breuning family in Bonn, who give him warmth and polish, almost a second home. By 1792, he heads to Vienna to study with Joseph Haydn. Haydn's the elder statesman of the symphony, and he also learns counterpoint with Johann Albrechtsberger and vocal writing with Antonio Salieri. In Vienna, he lands in aristocratic salons. Prince Lichnowsky and Prince Lobkowitz are early patrons, and he builds a rep as an improviser who could win piano duels, friendly but fierce, against players like Joseph Wölfel and Daniel Steibelt. That energy launches him.
Why did those salon duels matter so much? I mean, besides bragging rights?
Because Vienna's culture ran on rooms like that. Salons were the social media feeds of 1800. You impressed there. You got students, patrons, commissions. Beethoven's 1795 Burgtheater debut, performing his own concerto, cemented him as a star. That same year, his piano trio's Opus 1 dropped, dedicated to Lichnowsky, and they sold well. He was strategic too, sometimes withholding pieces to build hype. By 1800, he's premiering his first symphony. In 1801, his ballet The Creatures of Prometheus is a hit. Around 1798, he writes the Pathétique Sonata, which is like his calling card for dramatic keyboard writing. And between 1798 and 1800, he crafts the Opus 18 string quartets for Lobkowitz. He's absorbing the classical models, then subtly leaning on the walls to see which ones move.
Middle of the story, then the hearing starts to go around 1798, not all at once, but with that awful partner called tinnitus, the constant ringing. He writes to friends in 1801 about it. By 1802, he's in the village of Heiligenstadt, trying to follow medical advice and rest, and he writes that testament, Despair, then a pivot. From there, the middle period ignites. The Eroica Symphony in 1803 to 1804 is initially titled Bonaparte because Napoleon looked like a Republican hero. When Napoleon crowns himself emperor, Beethoven rips out the dedication. He wants ideals, not rulers. In 1805, his only opera, Fidelio, struggles at its premiere during French occupation. He revises it in 1806 and again in 1814, when it finally succeeds. Meanwhile, he delivers the Violin Concerto in 1806. The Fifth and the Pastoral Sixth both premiered in that wild 1808 marathon concert that was under-rehearsed and freezing. He scolds the players during the choral fantasy, badly played, wrong again. Chaotic Night, legendary output.
Why did the hearing loss drive him into these bigger, bolder works? Seems counterintuitive at first.
Because performance was becoming impossible, so he re-centered on composition and the music turned inward. With fewer public improvisations, he worked out long arcs on paper. Plus, patronage helped. In 1809, Archduke Rudolf, an Austrian prince and Beethoven's student, along with Princes Kinsky and Lobkowitz, pledged a pension to keep him in Vienna after a tempting job offer in Kassel. That security, even though it later wobbles with bankruptcy and death, lets him focus. In 1809, with Vienna bombarded by Napoleon's forces, he writes the Emperor Concerto and the Les Adieux Piano Sonata, marking Rudolph's departure and return. He's got one foot in history, one in pure sound. By 1811, he stops appearing as a concerto soloist because he just can't hear well enough. And in 1814, he makes a final public appearance as a pianist in the Archduke Trio. Louis Spohr, the violinist and composer, notices how out of sync he is with the piano. It's painful but honest.
End of the story. The late period is its own universe. He starts the Hammerklavier Sonata around 1817 to 1818, a mountain for pianists with a giant fugue at the end. The Missa Solemnis, a sacred mass, he begins for Archduke Rudolph's installation as Archbishop in 1819, becomes this personal credo filled with pleas for inner and outer peace. His Diabelli variations, 33 transformations of a simple waltz by the publisher Anton Diabelli, show how play can become philosophy. Then he takes on the Ninth Symphony, commissioned by London's Philharmonic Society. In 1824, it premieres in Vienna, with Michael Umlauf conducting. Caroline Unger, the contralto singer, reportedly turns him to face the audience so he can see the ovation he couldn't hear. Even then, reports say he could still catch low tones and sudden loud sounds. Not total silence, but close enough that conversation needed ear trumpets and conversation books. Those books, written exchanges he used when words were hard to hear, are now gold for scholars.
And in chamber music, he reaches the summit. Prince Nikolai Galitzin from St. Petersburg commissions 3 string quartets, and the results in 1825 to 1826 are revolutionary. One of them, Opus 132, has that slow movement titled Holy Song of Thanksgiving to the Divinity from a Convalescent in the Lydian mode. Lydian is an old church scale with a raised fourth, and it sounds both ancient and fresh. Opus 130 originally ended with the Grosse Fuge, the Great Fugue. Audiences found it overwhelming, so the publisher asked for a new finale. Beethoven wrote the new finale and published the fugue separately. Practical, but uncompromising. Toward the end, family turmoil hits. His nephew Karl attempts suicide in 1826. Beethoven is ill and worn down. He dies in 1827 at age 56. The funeral draws maybe 10,000 people. Franz Schubert, the younger composer, carries a torch. The public turnout is massive, and the legacy keeps growing. Symphony cycles in orchestras, quartets as the chamber benchmark, piano sonatas as rite of passage. Later composers from Schubert and Berlioz to Brahms and Wagner measure themselves against him.
On a lighter note, one detail that always surprises me, he had a real weakness in math. Reportedly, he simulated multiplication by repeated addition his whole life, yet his music runs on structural math. It's a cool reminder that the brain does its own wiring. Also, he endorsed Malzel's metronome. Johann Nepomuk Malzel designed early metronomes, so he was into modern tempo tools, even while shaping elastic, expressive time. That blend of precision and freedom is very Beethoven.
All right, let's pull on a contested thread. The Immortal Beloved, that unsent 10-page love letter from 1812. The identity is still debated. I lean toward Josephine Brunswick, a countess and piano student of his, with whom he had a long, emotionally intense connection. Her surviving letters to him read deeply personal, and the social barriers are glaring. She was married and widowed. The timing of their meetings and the intimate tone seemed to fit a sustained, if complicated, bond.
I hear that, and I kind of tilt toward Antoni Brentano. She was married to a Frankfurt merchant and part of a prominent family. Maynard Solomon, a major Beethoven biographer, makes an intricate case that Antoni's travel itinerary in July 1812 lines up with the letter's references. Her closeness to Beethoven's circle, the emotional temperature of their exchanges, and the logistics of who was where and when all point that way. But yeah, it's not nailed down. Documents are murky, and to make things trickier, Anton Schindler, a later associate who left memoirs, both preserved and distorted pieces of the record. We're always sifting through fog.
Why does it matter who she was? I mean, the music stands regardless.
It matters because it colors how we read the personal urgencies under the surface. If it's Antony, then that 1812 window looks like a late, forbidden blaze. If it's Josephine, the through line stretches longer, touching earlier works. Not to reduce music to biography, but it helps to see where life and art brush. Either way, the unanswered question keeps some mystery alive, and I like that the music refuses to be solved by one letter.
Speaking of where life meets the public square, pop culture-wise, the Ninth Symphony, the Ode to Joy finale, has become almost civic music. It's used at global celebrations, New Year's concerts, even as the European Union's anthem. It's a communal statement wrapped in symphonic form. Then you have Wellington's Victory, the flashy battle piece from 1813. Programmatic, meaning it depicts an event, in this case, the British defeat of Napoleon at Vittoria, and it was a smash hit at the time. Less spiritually deep than the symphonies, sure, but it shows he could ride the current of public feeling when he wanted to.
Okay, what if? Imagine his hearing never deteriorates around 1798. I see a Beethoven who keeps touring as a celebrity pianist, cranking out more piano concertos and probably more showpiece variations. Maybe the fifth and ninth still arrive, but the late quartets, those inward-looking radical structures, might be fewer or different. He might aim his boldness more toward public virtuosity than private transcendence. Also, with strong hearing, rehearsing an opera becomes less exhausting, so he might commit to the stage more often.
I'm with you on the opera angle. He clearly loved theater. He played viola in orchestras, absorbed stagecraft, and wrote powerful incidental music like Egmont, which was for a Goethe play. If Fidelio's first version hadn't bombed during occupation, and if he could still hear well to manage singers and rehearsals, I could see him writing a second opera, maybe pushing German opera alongside Carl Maria von Weber. He wrote Der Freischütz, or even shaping a different path that blends Beethoven's structural rigor with dramatic pacing. If he's less isolated socially, maybe the late spiritual voice of the Missa Solemnis and those quartets turns slightly outward, not quieter, just angled differently toward the public square.
Why do you think the isolation mattered that much to the style?
Because isolation changes how you hear. When the world gets quieter, the inner ear gets louder. Think of the Opus 132 Thanksgiving movement. It's like a diary entry in counterpoint. Counterpoint meaning weaving independent musical lines. I don't think the impulse disappears without hearing loss, but the intensity of inward focus probably softens. We might end up with more brilliant concertante writing. Concertante meaning soloist forward, and less of that late style that feels like it's written for eternity rather than the next concert season.
Either way, the actual timeline we got shows hardship turned into strategy. Hearing loss ends the public virtuoso lane. He redirects into symphonies, quartets, the mass. Patronage cushions the shift, and publication savvy, selling to multiple regions and leveraging exclusivity, keeps the lights on even when currency crashes and patrons falter. That's the practical genius under the myth.
All right, that ties it up nicely. From the Pathétique storm to the Ninth's embrace, from salon showdowns to conversation books, the arc holds a life wrestling with limits and riding past them.
So there we have it, a bridge builder who made the bridge itself sing. Stay curious, keep listening, and let those late quartets work on you over time.